facility and play, or you have no practices. That's the emphasis of why you have to keep things so locked down, and then you've got to go out there and play against the Steelers on Sunday. The Vikings, that will be a situation to monitor. So far, no positives from the Vikings. As you mentioned, though, Charles Robinson said that they think there could be some. That would be based on, I'm sure, the contact tracing that they've done with those who have been tested as positive, which would lead you to believe it's 3 guys who have played at least some level degree in that game for the Titans, because 5 coaches, 3 players, or 5 personnel. They don't know if all 5 are coaches, but there are coaches amongst that 5. Look, not ideal. Not the way that you wanted, your football Tuesday to start. I've said all along, and we've gone through now 3 weeks, and we've said, this was an important day because the test would come in. Tuesday, Wednesday are going to be important days in the NFL to see that testing that comes out after a travel period. What's interesting is the positives have come back from home teams. And,
right.
The one area, again, when people go home and it's their families and people around them, I think with kids back in school, there are so many variables that are difficult to account for every possible variable. And I would even posit that people can be doing everything correctly and you can still end up getting a positive because of somebody somewhere who ran into this and that and what have you. One thing I have noticed is after the games, for both the home and the road teams, but it's in our stadium anyway, because fans were allowed at the Ravens Stadium, for example, no fans were allowed. So you didn't see any of this, but there is post-game congregating of families and loved ones. And so that is, they're not tier 1, they're not tier 2. Those are people who are likely not being tested every day. And so there is probably some exposure to home teams, especially in that regard. And perhaps that's something that the league will end up looking at and evaluating, because the goal is to finish the season. You started on time. I think we all knew there'd be hiccups. It wouldn't surprise me ultimately if the season, because of the way it goes, ends up being stretched a little bit longer than the exact 17-week schedule that we see here. And that'll be something for everybody to deal with. But I think they'll move it around and try to do what needs to be done to complete this season. But this is no longer a drill. This is the first test of the NFL, and I think a lot of eyes will be paying close attention to how it deals with. Let's not forget, baseball went through this early in their season and got a handle on it. And now they're kicking off baseball playoffs tonight. Good luck to the Indians, by the way. Go Tribe. So it's not surprising that this has happened. It's unfortunate. We wish that we had just total smooth sailing, but how it's dealt with and how the NFL proceeds from here will be just as important as the fact that this did occur.
Absolutely. There's time that's built in this thing at the end of this schedule where if you need to move some games around, if there's some weeks that you can play in there. You remember I'm sure there's contingency plans to play the Super Bowl all the way until the end of February. Like there's ways that you can move this thing around to make it work and make sure that you get it all in, and I'm sure the NFL is prepared for all of this. Can you explain for me, to the best of your knowledge, the timeline of an NFL player testing through a weekend? Do you have a decent handle on that? So would they test Saturday before getting the results for Sunday? Is that how it would work? Or would they test?
I hope I will likely get my first exposure to this protocol this weekend when the team heads to Dallas. And I already got my email. Like, I will begin testing tomorrow and test, I'd imagine, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I do believe there is game day testing on Sundays prior to the games.
Okay. Is that rapid?
I think
like
it's
you
rapid.
Have the results in that in 5 minutes?
And then I think that there's testing, obviously, once you get back. Everybody who's coming in for testings on Mondays, Tuesdays, et cetera. So I think they're tested every day.
The reason I ask, and the reason I was curious about the rapid nature of the Sunday test, is if that did take place Sunday and all tests were negative, then the Vikings theoretically would be clear.
Right. I think you would think so, but perhaps there was an error in that, or perhaps I don't know. I do believe, because you're taking the testers.
I'm not holding you any of it.
I know testers travel with the team. So it would make sense to me that if the testers are traveling with the team, that there are tests in between the time that you arrive in your destination and the kickoff of your game.
Right. The reason I ask is because I know you got a pretty good handle on the way that what happens during the week. For example, like what's happening during the week in Berea, those tier 1, tier 2 people. All right. So now when we go on the road, we know the strict protocol that are in place on the road. So you say, all right, where could this get loose in terms of being exposed? And I'm not sure if Minnesota had fans there or not. I did not watch that game closely, so I don't know if there were fans there or not, or if there were family, or if it was a completely empty house. I don't know I don't know that. I did not watch that game, but I am curious when the exposure could have happened. Would it have been on the flight? Would it have been on the way back? Would it have been in Nashville when the exposure happened, or did it happen Saturday night in Minneapolis? Because if you're testing rapidly, and as much as we're being tested, that's where where's the fly in the ointment here?
Right.
Is what I'm getting at.
And I would guess that it had to be some type of an exposure in the hotel as a part of the travel scenario, or as I said, perhaps post-game, if there were families to be able to be there. That I don't know. Could have been something that was honestly contracted while they're at their homes on a Friday night. Mm-hmm. They get on, it doesn't show up by Saturday or Sunday, and now it shows up as they leave.
Sure.
So it could have been something that was in advance of that.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by how what the next couple of days on this looks like, and obviously we all are. We all want to know. Switching gears, fascinated by what you saw last night on Monday Night Football. So this was the other arm coming out from behind their back. That's what this was. This is what Kansas City did last night. They pulled the other arm out from behind their back. They said, "Oh yeah, watch what we worked on while you all were doing install. You teams with new coaches. We all of a sudden have added some wrinkles to this thing." And they threw some stuff. Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes threw some stuff at the Ravens last night that I've never seen. Some stuff I've never seen schematically done. It was awesome to watch. It was thrilling to watch. The reason I picked them was because of the issues that Baltimore had at linebacker and at safety, and those things showed up. Kelsey was big. Allaire was huge. The deep ball with Mahomes. But in the end, what this comes down to is Patrick Mahomes is very similar to what LeBron James was when he got into the NBA. We had never seen somebody 6'8", 260 who was also the smartest player on the court and also the most skilled. So he's the best athlete, he's the most skilled, and he's the smartest. And that's what Pat Mahomes is. He's at a level, Rodgers had an ability to do some of this stuff, but there aren't many in the history of the game that can do this, and Rodgers didn't accomplish this much this quickly. But this is really his greatness that was on full display yesterday.
Total command of what he is seeing on the field. And we've talked so many times about quarterbacks. The necessary skill, I think the most important skill is the ability to process information quickly, make good decisions, and then you got to have the arm talent to deliver the ball accurately. Now, when you can do that to every single corner of the field, then it becomes unfair. I mean, on the touchdown that he threw to McCole Hardman, he dropped 11 yards back and throws it off his back foot, a perfect strike 60 yards down the field. His ball to Tyreek Hill, when they had perfect coverage on him, was just stunning. I mean, he had to place it in one spot, and he did. He is so good. The movement they create is so good. And I was watching that game and wondering, we see a lot of teams that do pre-snap motion and the jet motion. Mm-hmm. Does anybody do that fake orbit motion that they do? And they do it all the time. And it just seems to be incredibly effective. Now, they have two guys who are kind of clones of each other in Hill and Hardman that you are so worried about their speed.
I was going to say, that helps.
Of course their personnel helps. But it is going to be watching them is like watching art. And as I've been saying a lot, you've been echoing, they're playing with one arm behind their back, and they took that arm out.
That's right.
They took that arm out and just put on a display. But what it revealed to me wasn't so much the Chiefs' greatness, which I think we knew about, and that the Chiefs can win any type of game at any point, no matter what the score is. In the third quarter, for example, just watch the Super Bowl. Just watch their playoff games.
Yeah.
The Ravens, much like I feel about us right now, have a pretty clear path to how they win. They have to play close games or be ahead, and then they can just put you away. But they're not a second half down 14 team that you're that worried about. Because Lamar Jackson, when it's known that they've got to throw the ball, not as effective as a Patrick Patrick Mahomes can be when it's known that he has to throw the ball. And so that's what you've seen with the Ravens. And it's been the one team that can do it by throwing it on them. The only team that can do it by throwing on them over the last 2 years has been the Chiefs.
Yes.
When we beat
the other
them,
2 losses were to us and the Titans.
Which was pound them out, get the lead, and pound them on the ground. And I think Henry had, 30 carries for $190 in that game, and in our game, Chubb had $165 and 3 scores.
Right. Yep. Yeah, that's the roadmap. I think the other thing that bothered me, and the reason I even felt more confident as we got closer to game, and I'm curious what your thoughts on this are. You heard as the ESPN people were making their picks, you heard about how it was personal for Baltimore. Like it meant so much to Baltimore. Like it's week 3. Settle down. And then to hear Lamar postgame interrupt a question and say, yeah, they're our kryptonite. Man, that is terrifying to me. Like Baltimore's too good for that. They're way too good for that, to have somebody be their – no. Kansas City's not their kryptonite. Kansas City's everybody's kryptonite because of that kid, but there's a way to beat him. Kid, man, MVP of the league, best player in the world, Patrick Mahomes. But I thought that was odd to hear Lamar say that and vocalize it post-game, acknowledging that they're your kryptonite. That bugged me, man, to hear him say that. And some of the stuff I heard, and I know that stuff on that pregame show, that all comes from those meetings with those teams. So that tells you that Baltimore was talking like that all week. And I just thought, this seems like it's way too important to Baltimore for week 3.
Well, it's about making a statement, right? Because they've lost. They lost at the end of 2018. They lost the Chiefs. They lost to the Chiefs in week 3 of 2019. And they know, that to be able to get where you want to get, which is the Super Bowl, and to win Super Bowls and to make it, a rivalry as was so heavily discussed during the broadcast last night, you've got to win.
Right.
It's not a rivalry when you don't win. Just listen, as somebody who came into this state from California many years ago, when I arrived here, there was a real rivalry between Michigan and Ohio State.
Yes.
Over the time of me being here, it's hard to say that's a rivalry. I don't even know when's the last time that Michigan won was. You do. I'm sure you have that at the ready.
Yeah.
It's been a long time, though, right? We're talking.
It's been. They've won twice in 20 years.
Right. Not a rivalry. Sorry, that's not a rivalry.
Right.
So it would be great if it were. I think it's better for everybody involved if it is. But it was important to the Ravens. They wanted to, Steve Young, get the monkey off of their back and prove that they can beat, Joe Montana never did that. He just takes out intruders who are trying to snatch grandchildren from his house. No big deal.
How about that?
It's the GOAT. He's the GOAT. Don't come into Joe Montana's house and try to snatch one of his grandchildren. He's not having that. Nonetheless, the Ravens, it's interesting. I feel conflicted about it because my initial reaction is you never want to admit that something is your kryptonite. Like that sounds, we're so taught as athletes. In your head. That's it. They're in your head. They're living rent free. That's a weakness. But when you say it, it loses some of the power, I think.
Maybe.
It's like,
maybe.
You know what they are, and we're going to do what we got to do to figure it out. Right now they are. And that's cool. And guess what? Yeah. We're 31 other teams in the NFL's kryptonite.
Yes. Yeah, so we just got one out there.
We got to figure one out right
problem.
Now. Although I'm curious to see them and the Steelers. I think that those are going to be. We talked about before. I kind of like the Steelers a little bit better for this season than the Ravens, and I am not dissuaded from that last night. But I didn't have as much of a problem. I will say I have not seen Lamar Jackson look like that on the sideline
since he was a rookie
in a long time.
Since he was a rookie. It meant a lot to him, and it did seem like maybe too much, considering where for me it did. It seemed like it maybe mattered a little bit too much. The interesting thing with them is they have at their disposal, I think, the only way that you can beat Kansas City, and that is you have to be able to run the ball at a really elite level. You got to be that's offensively. That's the first thing you got to be able to do. Obviously, you want to be elite in the back end. And you've got to be able to get to him. You've got to be able to get home to Patrick Mahomes. But he's so good on that stuff. Did you see the stat on him from against the Blitz last night? Did you see this stat from PFF? It's unbelievable.
What am I hard
Mahomes
of seeing?
versus the Blitz last night. Mahomes versus the Blitz last night, folks. 85% completion percentage, 240 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a 156.3 rating. Is that good?
Yeah. Did you read the whole? That's from their tweet, right?
Yeah.
Did you read the whole
Yep.
tweet? Wasn't the last sentence in the tweet something like, "This is the best rating against the blitz against Baltimore since 2019," which I thought, why are we even including that line? That was last year. We're acting like 2019 was 20 years ago.
Right.
And frankly, that should be the best performance against the blitz against the Ravens maybe ever.
Maybe ever. I'm guessing it was Mahomes in 19.
Maybe, but that's like, don't even include that. That's last year. Then you don't need that sense.
That's not that long ago.
It takes away from it. Oh, it happened last year. No big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's something. He's really special, and the Ravens were shook. There's no question they were shook, and they weren't able to get the run game going. The hard thing against playing Kansas City is you really can't trade. Like, that first drive was perfect. It took 6 minutes off the clock, but then you get a field goal, and they get 6 right back every time they get 6. You can't trade. You can't have field goals are failures against that team. They're failures. Anything that ends in a kick is a failure against Kansas City. Any drive that ends in a kick is a failure because of the way that they can score. So
totally.
They're a marvel. They really are. Those are the Ohio OBM Hot Topics. Ohio Business Machine's preferred copier provider, your Cleveland Browns. For all the X's and O's for your office, call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. And a reminder, you can watch the show again on the Browns YouTube page, compliments of our great friends at Buffalo Wild Wings. A lot to get to on the program, including Seth Walder coming up at the bottom of the hour. We'll take a peek ahead to the Dallas Cowboys on the slate this Sunday. Coming up next, you're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily here on a Tuesday edition. Beau here from my great friends at Raising Cane's. On game day, go for the win with Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers. Stack your roster with delicious hand-battered cooked-to-order chicken fingers and cane sauce, and huddle up with crispy, crinkle-cut fries, coleslaw, and buttery Texas toast. And top it all off with freshly made tea and lemonade. Visit the newest Raising Cane's on Brook Park Road in North Olmsted, right behind Great Northern Mall. Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers certainly is one love. All right, time to turn the page. Back to work tomorrow are your Cleveland Browns, and they got to figure out the Dallas football team. Here's did you hear Jerry Jones today? Did you read this?
I did, but when I actually have listened to the full comment, he was actually praising Dak. It was definitely very misrepresented, the first tweets about it that came out.
Okay. I was doing my other job this morning, so I just saw the tweet. I didn't comment on it, but I didn't have a chance to hear it. So the comment as it's represented in Twitter is basically saying the reason Dak Prescott isn't Pat Mahomes and even Tony Romo is because he wasn't able to make the play at the end of the game. But that's not the way it was on the air.
What he was saying is that like Dak Prescott and Patrick Mahomes, like Romo, like Russell Wilson, the fact that he even was able to keep that play alive and maybe extend that play is why he is like those guys. Here's the direct.
Wow, how is that sad, man?
Hey, give me 2
truth.
seconds. I was just uploading the cut right now.
Oh, beautiful. I was going to do a transcript, but I'd rather hear it right
disembodied
from Uncle Jerry himself.
Gibby.
By the way, Dak Prescott is on pace right now to shatter the single-season passing yardage record by 1,000 yards. He is 50 yards per game ahead of the number 2 quarterback in a yards per game basis, which is Josh Allen in terms of passing yards per game. He's 50 yards per game ahead of Josh Allen. I was doing some stuff getting ready for this week, obviously. He has got more completions than Baker Mayfield has pass attempts.
Yeah.
He's averaging more than double the yards passing per game that Baker is. But to be fair, though, more completions than pass attempts, which is a stunning.
So they were on Sunday Night Football.
Yes.
So they were on Sunday Night Football week 1. They had the great comeback in week 2 when we played on Thursday, so I was able to watch. I watched all the games week 1, most of their game on week 2 with Red Zone, and then this week I watched almost all of their game on Sunday against Seattle. He's great. He's great.
Yeah.
He is great. He is throwing BBs. He's so accurate. They really haven't even unlocked CeeDee Lamb yet. This Wilson guy comes out of nowhere. Who knows where this guy comes from? The only thing they botched in the Seattle game was, they had all their timeouts, and they weren't able to, and it still felt rushed, which made no sense. They had made a crazy screenplay. They tried a crazy screen pass to Zeke in that drive that ate up a ton of clock, and then they didn't take time. It was just really mismanaged from that standpoint. But in terms of what he did, it felt like every time Russell Wilson scored, he scored. And around the round they go. And so, Gibby, let me know when we're getting that when we get that loaded up if we're going to have it for this segment or not. But what I was going to say is, when you say the question,
I got it,
concerns you the most, that because we're not good on the back end right now. A lot of that injury, I don't know who's going to be here and who's not for the game on Sunday. You may have a better handle on that, but they are the real deal spinning the football.
They've got 3 receivers on their football team who are in the top 16 in the NFL in receiving yards. 3.
That's right.
On the same team.
That's right.
They've got Cooper with 267. You've got Gallup with 246, who's averaging 22.4 a catch. CeeDee Lamb's at 230, averaging 15 yards a catch. Cedric Wilson, you just mentioned, has 5 catches, 107 yards at 21.4 a catch. They got a tight end who's got 147 yards already and 14 catches, and that wasn't even their season starter, but Dalton Schultz. It's stunning what they're doing, the numbers that they're putting up. And he is efficient. Now, as we go through the week, I've already done some digging, and I found his kryptonite, as it were, which is the kryptonite of most quarterbacks, but it's usually not as severe as it is in the case of Dak Prescott. But let's hear what Jerry Jones had to say about his quarterback.
I know you watch all the games, the Monday night games.
both on.
Playing. Watching last night, do you see a major gap between the Cowboys and where the Chiefs are right now?
Oh, yeah. I see, yes. I see a team that is clicking. They're the Super Bowl champs. and they look like they've gotten better. The running back is outstanding. I watched him live last year at LSU. I was watching my grandson play him, and at that particular time, I loved him. I loved him in the draft. I was dreaming that he might get over into the second and somehow be around where we could look at him. But he's an exceptional player, their running back. And obviously with their quarterback, who's, I think, at the highest level right now because of his, frankly, as much as just his natural ability to make plays, his mobility. And this guy's very quick and elusive and can get in and out of situations with his feet and buy time. The quarterback we played Sunday is of that kind of nature. He's very, has great ability to get in and out and then make the play. That play Dak made at the end of the game that got intercepted. Well, the result of Dak's ability that let him get that ball off was really great and outstanding. Well, these guys do that, have that ability a lot.
30.
They're very quick-footed, and they have the unique ability to possibly take their eyes away from the field for a minute and then immediately focus back and see. Romo had that. And so they can turn his back on it and turn around and
Stand by.
get it done quick. And so those are things that show up, and that's what's showing up with these guys. They're buying time with their feet. They're buying time with their instincts and their feet.
You're up.
That's courtesy of the fan in Dallas. Man, that's a shame.
Yeah, he's saying
That's
Dak
really a
has
shame.
those same abilities.
He says he has the same abilities. And it's been pushed around on social all morning as if he was saying Mahomes and Romo make these plays and our guy can't.
He's saying
And
the
it
fact
couldn't
that
be
he
further
even
from
got
what he
to
just
the
said.
Right, the fact that he even got to the point
Correct.
where he could try to make that play and it ended up being an interception, but what he did with his feet to just keep that play alive
Yes.
is what these guys are doing. And by the way, he's making a lot more plays doing that than not, as his passing yards and certainly his production would attest. By the way, in addition to the nearly 1,200 yards passing he has through 3 games, remember, 1,200 yards passing means you're averaging 400 yards a game.
That's right.
And he's 12 yards off of that right now. So you could easily deduce that he's averaging 396 yards passing per game. He also has 74 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns.
That's right.
So he's personally accounting for over 400 yards a game, 420 yards a game, and 3 touchdowns a game, basically.
Yeah. And they are having to chase games every week. So they're not able to get Zeke going really at all. And so it just turns into them throwing it around. And as to your point, they throw it around better than anybody in the league right now. And they just have a ton of weapons. And this is just going to be a huge week for our secondary to get healthy. Now, obviously, the D-line can get home, and we'll get into some of that, and that's going to be key.
Yes.
A lot of Texas guys going back to Texas, I assume, would be supremely motivated, including Miles, who's been great early on this season. But you've got to be able to cover because he can throw it from anywhere, and they hit bombs. I mean, you said Gallup's averaging 22 yards a catch. He's had 2. He had the one against the Rams taken back for offensive pass interference that was a 60-yard bomb that would have added to that. I mean, that's all he does. He's like on Matt, go deep,
All right.
like
So
schoolyard.
we'll obviously dive more into this as we go on. But you throw bombs. Okay, the Cowboys have completed 18 pass plays already of more than 20 yards, most in the NFL. 5 of more than 40 yards, shocker, most in the NFL. Prescott has 9 completions of more than 20 air yards, so passes 20 yards in the air, 9 completions on those for more than 350 yards. Again, both second most in the NFL. They will throw it anywhere. They can make big plays from throwing it 20 yards in the air. They have 9 plays of more than 20 yards because it went in the air 20 yards. They have 9 where the ball was thrown below 20 yards in the air, and they made 20-yard plays out of them. This offense is just ridiculous, and I won't give away what happens when he's under pressure, but know this. If you don't pressure Dak Prescott, this is what he's doing when he is not pressured. 76% completion, 9 yards an attempt, 943 yards,
an
5
attempt?
touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 118 if you don't pressure him. He's already throwing for 300-plus
there you
yards
go.
a game, not pressured.
Yeah. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
All right, much more on that as the week goes along. Are you a sportsman looking for a part-time weekend job? Get into the action at First Energy Stadium, home of your Cleveland Browns. Wes is now hiring for part-time event staff and security. Apply online at weshiring.com. Coming up next, Seth Walder, ESPN Sports Analytics, joins us for he did a really interesting NFL analytics survey. RGM Andrew Berry scored quite well in that, and we will get the details on that from him coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. If you live and breathe football, you know sometimes keeping your priorities straight can be a challenge. Unfortunately, the same can be true when you gamble. If you find your gambling is affecting other parts of your life, we can help. Get tips on responsible gambling at keepitfunohio.com. Let's head out on the Fifth Third Moneyline. Our good buddy Seth Waller, ESPN sports analytics writer, on the Fifth Third Moneyline. And this was a pretty cool thing you did, this NFL analytics survey, and thank you so much for your time, Seth. And we fared quite well in this. In doing this, what are some of the things that stood out to you? What were the headlines? What were things that maybe you came away with and said, boy, I didn't realize that?
Yeah, so I would say a couple things. So what I did for folks that don't know, I surveyed 26 analytics staffers across the league and asked them a bunch of questions about analytics in the NFL. The Browns were considered by the group the second most analytically advanced team, and that's sort of based on a combination of the level of work teams other people think that the Browns are doing and how well they integrate that into their decision making. That the Browns were that high wasn't a surprise to me. I thought it would come down to the Ravens and Browns with the Eagles lurking right behind. I think the things that stood out to me were, well, who's the next tier? Okay, I had kind of a sense. I think that's a little bit more of a mystery. So teams like the Bills, 49ers, Vikings, and Seahawks and Colts, Rams, those are teams that are kind of lurking in that sort of second tier. And then the biggest surprise to me was I asked folks, how many teams do you think are using player tracking data to create metrics? And most of them thought like a little less than half maybe. And yet when asked, does your team use player tracking data to create metrics and use and build and create metrics? Almost all of them said yes. It's not a random sample, but that is sort of a disconnect there, implying that maybe some teams are doing a little bit more than what everyone expects.
It certainly is. That is a funny way of looking at, well, we do, but we think we're the only ones that are doing these great things. When you went through this and you knew kind of that top tier, did you get a sense around the league? Because, you know, some teams that are in the least analytically inclined, teams that have been doing it one way for a while, I'd say the Steelers, the Titans, you look at the Chiefs, they're having a lot of success. The teams in your analytics side of it are also having success, with the exception, obviously, of the Browns, but we all hope that that's coming. Was there a sense of where it's going? Do teams feel strongly about the role of analytics? Are people either believers or skeptics? What's kind of just the overall perception of it and its relation to success, which is winning football games?
I think the overwhelming thing is just how wide the range is across the NFL, where I think you have teams like Cleveland, where I think that they're probably the whole organization is, I am imagining, I think people think that the organization is kind of aligning around data analysis. And I think that is just a very far cry from where some other teams are. And then even the in-betweens, even the difference between, say, like the Bills and what we think maybe the Titans are doing, and this is I should say we're all sort of guessing, right? All the people that I surveyed were sort of guessing, but they have an idea. Even the difference between, say, the Bills and the Titans is probably pretty wide. So I think it's that disparity across the league. I think that definitely folks in analytics think that it is, it is a growing movement, that there's a lot of value, that the player tracking data adds a lot of value, and ultimately, if the goal is to get wins, which is what NFL teams are trying to do, if this is an edge for them, you're leaving that on the floor if you don't start, performing quantitative analysis and incorporating that into your decision making.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Seth, what you did here, and honestly, there's a line here from someone who you spoke with about our guy Andrew Berry, and you mentioned a line, and I think that's what this is very clearly what this has all been about with he and Stefanski and Paul DePodesta. And all right, we're all on the same page. There's not going to be dissenting voices. This is what we're going to do. These are our processes. This is the Browns' way going forward. But this line about Andrew, I thought was really incredible. It said Andrew Berry, he's a true believer. He's one of those rare guys you'll come across in life where you think to yourself, man, this guy thinks at a different level, just pure genius. He's one of them. Obviously, we're quite fond of AB as well, but that is as glowing as you're going to get to hear about your general manager.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty floored, when I heard kind of that level of praise, and from someone, to be clear, that does not work for the Browns. So that's someone outside admiring what's happening in Cleveland, and I think it is as high praise as you can get. And I do think that there's a lot of value if the Browns can sort of get that organization aligned and take advantage of their pretty vast analytics resources in terms of staffing. Then that I think, maybe I'm biased because I'm an analytics writer, but I would think that will be an advantage for them in 2020 and years to come.
Where do you think for the teams, or what was the perception of those that you talked to, where the biggest edge comes from? Is it in-game decisions? Is it, clock management? Is it going for 2 at the right time? Is it going for it on 4th downs? Is it in-game decisions? Is it scouting decisions? Is it roster creation? Where do they think the biggest actual edge comes from being analytically superior to your contemporaries?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. I think that the answer often is those sort of in-game decisions, 4th downs, 2-point conversions. But what folks said was those are high impact if you can convince the decision makers to actually follow the data. But it's often very hard to do that. So you can talk about it in a meeting, but you need to be able to get the head coach on board with making those sort of decisions. And if you can't, then that's just not gonna help your team. So it kind of hinges. That can be very impactful because it can really impact. It can really help the team on game day. But at the same time, it's hard to pull off. I think that the other 2 areas that people mentioned that stood out was coaching and opponent scouting. So, coaches obviously spend all week preparing for the opponent and setting things up. And I think that when you have quantitative analysis, you can allow you can come up with some insights that you might not otherwise find. You might be able to streamline that process, make things more efficient. I think that can be a help there. And then college personnel scouting through data analysis was something that folks felt like was really important. And the way one person put it was, in the NFL, the disparity between players is not that high. Everyone's at a really good level. But in college, because there's this wide range of how good people are, your teammates, your opponents, it really lends itself to quantitative analysis to be able to try and reconcile those differences in skill levels and make those kind of like opponent adjustments.
It's really fascinating piece, and the way that, and I know how important it is for us and with this group and how we're using it. And Nathan kind of touched on this earlier to you, Seth. We're talking about some of the teams that were voted that did not have that were the least analytically advanced, and among those on that list, obviously Tennessee, which has had success recently, but obviously Pittsburgh jumps out and Kansas City jumps out as receiving votes. Pittsburgh got 2 votes. Pittsburgh's been about as stable as any organization, but they've had stable front office. So of the teams that are trying to marry this, because we tried this, right? I mean, we tried this with John Dorsey, who was not certainly crazy about being analytically advanced, and yet we had an analytics department that was one of the best in the league. So there's got to be a pull there that can be difficult as well, and something obviously we experienced. Do you see that around the league?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's always that sort of question where it's, okay, how much are they actually incorporating analytics into their decisions? And by the way, there's also a kind of factor here, which is like analytics transactions don't get a lot of news, but like the Steelers, for example, had an analytics coordinator named Kareem Kassam who was, highly respected, and he left and went to the Minnesota Twins. And so I think people felt like, oh, okay, I don't know what the situation is over there after he's gone. So, while it doesn't make big news elsewhere, certainly analytics staffers are paying attention to, who is moving to what team.
If did any of them shed light on potential trends they see in the NFL as a result of analytics? I think, one thing you would say, analytics says we need to be, the game's won up front and on the back end from a defensive standpoint. And yet we saw the Baltimore Ravens this year use a first-round pick on an off-ball linebacker and a second-round pick on a running back. And analytics would say, and that's why I think it's so funny, the Texans show up as most analytically advanced and then also least analytically advanced. Man, I'm sure the trade for David Johnson has a lot to do with the least part of it, certainly not the most part of it. But But what did anybody shed any light on what they see the trends of the NFL being? Is it is a copycat league? It's one where you're looking for, you have limited resources. We know the salary cap because of COVID this year is going to go down. Roster construction, I imagine, is an area that analytics will play a big role in. Who's giving you the most value towards winning? And clearly here, off-ball linebacker not the priority that it was in Baltimore in this draft, or maybe they just thought Patrick Queen was a transcendent player. But any insight into that and trends of how it's going to affect roster makeup or what we see on the field?
I think that it's actually fairly straightforward in that in football like analytics wise there's a lot of low hanging fruit, and so I think the number one thing is shifting emphasis towards the passing games, and so paying attention to like personnel wise players that impact the passing game, that they are going to have probably higher leverage over wins and losses than those that are more run oriented. But then, decision making in games. So talking about early down passing, lots of play action, right, which is something I think we're going to see a lot more, or we already are seeing a fair amount of in Cleveland. Things like motion, pre-snap motion. Those are all things that we see a quantitative edge when teams perform those parts of an offense. And so it just makes sense that if you're going to follow the data, you're going to shift yourself towards those trends. I think those are all things that we would likely see. There's other ones like fourth downs, of course. Trading down in the draft has long been a market inefficiency. But of course, that only works if there are teams willing to trade up. So far, that has remained true. Teams are willing to trade up. They have not really adapted, or not all teams have really adapted, so you can still find those trades. But if there are more teams in the NFL that start to pay attention to that, it'll be a harder inefficiency to take advantage of.
And I think that's going to be one of the fascinating things to watch in the next few years, is there is more data and teams sift through it, that what was the outlier trend or tendency that got you an advantage when it becomes commonplace, does it still provide that same advantage? And I think that's going to be really interesting to watch. Absolutely, because the pendulum can always swing too far, and then you can take advantage. And of course, there's limits to everything, right? Like people say, well, the Ravens are team analytics, they run so often. Well, yeah, if you are as successful at running as the Ravens are, you can run like crazy. Go right ahead. But no one runs like they do. But you're right. The pendulum can swing too far. You could have a situation where teams are so desperate to trade down that it actually is advantageous to trade up. You could have situations where teams are actually going for it on fourth down too much. However, I don't think we're close really to any of those sort of those switches.
Seth, this was great. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it a great deal.
Thank you, guys.
All right, that's Seth Walder, ESPN Sports Analytics writer on the Fifth Third Money Line. A reminder, all guests who appear on CBD appear via the Fifth Third Money Line. Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns daily a Fifth Third better. What you want the mix. You want really smart people making informed decisions. It's no more difficult than that.
That's what you want in any line of work, and then you want to have people that are able to accept that information, implement that information, and then obviously the players who can execute on the field. It's still about the players. It's always going to be about the players. And you've got to have the right coaches in place who are installing the systems correctly and are motivating and reaching the players. But when you can make smart decisions, yes, it's on the periphery, but the little bit of the periphery can be the difference in 10-6 and 6-10, because there are going to be multiple games that come down to a play here, play there. And it could be either a smart decision that leads to a successful outcome, or putting a player in a position to make a game-changing play. We've seen Myles Garrett do each of the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's and in the end, sometimes it just comes down to gut. Like on that list, Kansas City's low down on that list. They won a Super Bowl. Somebody, Brett Veach, John Dorsey's on that staff at that point, obviously said, you know what? We like the kid from Texas Tech. That's our guy. And then away you go. So some of it's just who's to your point, it comes down to the players very, very much. Rumpke Waste and Recycling, family owned and operated since 1932. They've been in business for 87 years. They keep American neighborhoods clean and green. Their customers, employees, and communities, they're all part of the family. You can visit them at rumpke.com to learn more. Coming up at the top of the hour, we will get into a little bit more of the Dak Prescott conversation. We'll go around the league as well, and we'll give you an update on where we sit on this Tennessee story. And at the bottom of the next hour, a little game we like to call higher or lower.
No, we don't.
Better or worser,
we do.
just right or sweet spot. Oh, boy. Pure joy coming your way shortly here, kids. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Injuries during childbirth require experienced counsel. Call the lawyers at Elk & Elk for clear answers to what happened during your child's birth. Elk & Elk, a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. Call 1-800-ELK-OHIO today. Second hour of the program here. The headline in the sports world, obviously the positive test with the Tennessee Titans. That organization shut down until Saturday. We don't know beyond that what it looks like, if they're going to attempt to play or how widespread it is. The Vikings sent home as well. You knew that this would come. The details on this will be fascinating to me, and the timeline will be fascinating, Z, in terms of what does this look like? Like, if you don't practice all week and you're Tennessee, can you still host Pittsburgh on Sunday with a limited roster? And if you're Pittsburgh, do you even want to expose yourself to that?
And I think that's going to be the real question going forward. And right now the NFL is saying plan on proceeding. Mike Vrabel told his team, look, if we have to go with just a walkthrough on Saturday, no excuses. That's what we've got to do. We've got to go out there and try to get to 4-0 with that being the case. I do not believe, however, that anybody who would be possibly contaminated would be on the field. So I don't know that there's risk necessarily for the Steelers to come in. I think you'd have a very good handle on who's positive or not. And for the Titans thus far, it appears it's 3 players. We don't know who those players are, but it appears that it is 3 players, and they will have to be placed on the COVID reserve list today. I would imagine at 4 o'clock, that information will be known. They will have to do that. That's the way that this works. So you'll have an idea of that. Obviously, they're doing more testing as we speak to see, going through the contact tracing, who are the potential people on both the Titans and the Vikings. The Vikings, I believe, are set to take on the Seahawks this week. So, as of now,
they're Houston.
They're Houston?
Vikings
Texans.
are Houston.
You're right. Sorry,
yeah.
Texans.
Both 0-3. I mean, it's a must-win.
It is, and that will be in how that's handled will be interesting. We knew this was going to happen at some point. How it's handled now is what's going to go forward to determining the success. And I think it is possible that the games get postponed, and I think that's probably okay. And you just have to look. We're trying to get
built in.
We're trying to get to a finish line. When that finish line, where it is not. We're not wed to exactly as this schedule was laid out.
We haven't had to discuss this because this hasn't come across our desk until right now. But you will recall that when this schedule was put out and what it looked like, that there was a way for this thing to be pushed all the way to, if you want to play the Super Bowl at the end of February, you could. There was room to do that. There's room to move. So I think that's a big realization that this is very different than the parameters that certainly than the colleges have, and so there's room to move this around to make sure everybody gets it in, and I think that they will, and this will happen more.
Yep.
This is the first of what I think will be quite a bit of this over the course of the season, and then what does it look like? How do you handle it? Those type of things will be the big questions going forward. But this will just be the very first of it, and we had it today on what has otherwise been a sterling launch to the season. This is our first real hiccup that we've had in the National Football League. This week 3 is in the books. It was a fun one last night. It was interesting to see just how dominant Kansas City was. It's amazing Mahomes on display, what he is capable of, the way that team is built. It's so sustainable because when you have that guy and you have Andy Reid, who's nothing short of a genius play caller, deserves a ton of credit for adapting what he is to Patrick Mahomes, which has been really fun to see. They're so inventive of what they do offensively, and his talent allows for it, but also Reid's genius allows for it. But I was thinking about this with them. There's nothing that prevents them from this going for a very, very long time because he's in place. So they can draft. You think about the draft, these receiver-heavy drafts. The second Tyreek Hill loses a step, there will be another receiver that you can pick at 29. They're going to be picking between 29 and 32. Like they got Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year. Plug him in. Away he goes. 5 years later, they need another one. They'll be able to get a running back at the bottom of the first round that they can step in and play for 4 or 5 years, and away they go. But it's predicated on him. The fact that they were able to get him, Kelsey, why am I blanking on the big guy up front who had the big play last night on the defensive side? Chris Jones. They got all those contracts renegotiated and locked up long term. People are going to want to play there.
Of course.
It's an organization that treats players right. You've all heard about the 3, I don't know if you've heard, I'm sure you have, but I don't know if our audience has had, the 3 chefs that they have make whatever you want when you go into the facility, like all the things that they have working for them. And so, like, it's a place people are going to want to play. They're going to want to play with him. They're going to play on discounts. They're going to be here like this for a very, very long time.
It certainly looks that way, and they've done a great job of setting that up. And Patrick Mahomes is the one that makes it all work for when Andy Reid concocts these unbelievable things. And Eric Bieniemy is going to be a head coach somewhere in the NFL very soon, and probably next year, I would imagine. So, yeah, they are a stunning team. And, you know, one of the things we noted in the offseason is how, for example, the Denver Broncos looked like they were trying to build a team solely to compete with the Kansas City Chiefs. And here we are going into week 4. Their number 1 receiver is gone. Their number 1 pass rusher is gone. Their quarterback is gone. And they are starting undrafted free agent from Boise State, Brett Rippon, on Thursday Night Football. It's been announced.
Mark Rippon's kid?
Against the Jets. Rippon, Darnold, Thursday Night Football, must watch.
Wow. Well, that's the tank for Trevor Bowl. If I'm Denver, I lean into it. I'd lean into it. I'd go 0-16, and I'd draft Lawrence number 1, and then can you imagine him landing in that spot with all that weaponry?
Sutton,
that they have in place?
Hamler, Judy.
Yeah, sign me up. He'd love that out there. I mean, that'd be a spectacular landing spot. That'd be ready-made. Like that happened with the San Antonio Spurs did that when Robinson went down that one year and they leaned into it. They got Duncan.
Yeah.
The Colts did that when Manning went down. Remember they had a pretty dang good team around Peyton Manning, but Manning went down and they leaned into it.
Curtis Finger Painter is what I called him. He was making some starts for that team that year.
Yes, he was. There was somebody who came in and won some games, and they're like, well, we can't have this. I can't remember who it was.
Get out of
here.
here.
They brought in somebody who was winning games. I want to say it was a veteran. And they're like, well, we can't have this. We got to get back to doing what we're supposed to do. We can't lose this thing. So that will be interesting for sure. This is a fun one for us with Dallas. Going down to Big D, major test. You're coming off of a huge test. You think about this quarter, first 4 games. Every NFL team does this. They break everything down into quarters. You start in Baltimore. Going to be a tough one. 2 games you had to have. They were must-wins. You had to have them if you're going to make the playoffs. You can't lose to bad teams. Both Cincinnati and Washington are bad teams. You don't. You take care of business. You handle your business. You're 2-1. Now Dallas. Game 4. Dallas comes in at 1-2. It's a must-win for them. An absolutely must-win for them. They cannot drop to 1-3. Their division allows for some leeway in that it's so bad that they can still win the division, honestly, at 8-8, 9-7. But they need to start stacking wins if they are going to be what they think they're going to be. They are explosive offensively, as we've discussed. As for us, this is a real good measuring stick to see where you are. And we'll know more when we know who's healthy and who's not.
But it's going to be a huge measuring stick. By the way, the quarterback in the year 2011 who won both games that the Indianapolis Colts won that year before they ended up drafting Andrew Luck was none other than friend of the show, Dan Orlovsky.
Orlovsky won those games?
Dan Orlovsky.
So they were playing Painter.
Painter went 0-8.
They put in
Orlovsky went 2-3. Kerry Collins started the season was 0-3. But Orlovsky's wins both came at the end. It was
that's what I remember. It was like, wait a second, we can't have this.
Week 15 against Tennessee, week 16 against Houston, and then they lost to Jacksonville in week 17. But I want to see if they had given him
that
the
wasn't
boot,
him though,
or if they told him. No, he still started that game, but it looks like they calmed it down. They said, let's go ahead and calm it down. They lost to the Jags in a game in which Blaine Gabbert threw for 11 of 19 for 92 yards. So.
Well, you didn't want to screw that one up.
No.
And they didn't. They made sure that they got their guy, certainly. That's funny.
Dan Orlovsky. We'll have to talk to him about that next time we chat with him. But back to the Browns and the Cowboys. Yes, this is a measuring stick game. One thing that's interesting about our defense, and it is a much maligned pass defense. I think if you were to just go based on the talk of the town per se, you would be under the impression that we have the worst pass defense in the NFL. And now some of the stats obviously buoyed by last week against Dwayne Haskins. But the week before, even with Joe Burrow, you held him to about 5 yards an attempt. You're giving up 6.6 yards per attempt on the season, which is 6th best in the NFL. You have avoided big plays in terms of pass plays of more than 20 yards, pass plays of more than 40 yards. You've only given up one of those all season. That was the bomb to Hollywood Brown week 1. So you've done a very good job of limiting that. The problem is you just haven't come through on the third downs. And those are money plays. And by the way, when you do come through on
Yeah.
third down, it seems like teams then go convert on you on fourth down. And that's where you've got to get off the field. And that comes from individual efforts. And that comes from guys up front getting pressure, Myles Garrett, et cetera, Porter Gustin, Sheldon Richardson, who's been spectacular this year. Or it comes from guys on the back end making plays and getting good coverage. I still think we play so much zone that we have run into, some communication issues that have allowed for conversions. We're really trying to address the linebacker spot. You saw Malcolm Smith play much more in coverage this week. He gets an interception, which was, of the 3 interceptions, the one that I would actually credit to the defensive player for making a good play and jumping a route. The other 2, Dwayne Haskins literally just threw the ball to our guys and not to his. So there is some hope, but you're going to be tested. You're going to be tested. Dak's averaging more passing attempts per game than Baker has attempted in the last 2 games combined.
Yeah.
You're going to be stressed.
What did you have more completions for Prescott in this so far this season than Baker has attempts?
Yeah, he has 93 completions. Baker has 85 attempts on the season.
Yeah. I mean, they've
got speed, and it's
just
indoors.
Yeah.
It is going to be right. You're going to have to be on it, and you're going to have to get pressure, and we'll talk about why that's so important. But you're going to have to get pressure from your front four. Dak Prescott's much in many ways similar to Mahomes in that because they have so much talent out wide, and because he is good. I mean, he is that good that when you blitz him, he's got guys who can win one-on-ones, and he can put the ball where it needs to be. Blitzing him is not the solution.
No, it's not. And they're so good at the line of scrimmage. Their receivers are so good at the line of scrimmage of getting off. And not that we would be impressed, but I mean they're so quick at getting separation right away. It's been they're a fun team to watch. They really are. Gibby asked the question, what is Dak Prescott worth? Should he be one of the 5 highest paid quarterbacks in the league? Look, I mean, it's a tricky one because you say to yourself, whoever's up for the next extension ought to be. Is he one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league? If he's not, he's close. He's in that conversation. I mean, if you think about the only people in the league who you'd say, like, we love our guy, who are those guys? Russ, Mahomes, Lamar? I mean, in terms of young guys, the rest, it's like the older guys. It's Rodgers and Roethlisberger and those guys. But, I mean, there's a lot of guys that are like, they really like their guys, and they got nice players. But they're in terms of, like, I wouldn't trade him for anybody. There's maybe 3 of those in the league. So is Prescott one of those 3 guys? No, but he's really good, and I think you can definitely win a Super Bowl with him.
Yeah, I mean, right now I think you'd have to put him ahead of Matt Ryan, who's also playing very well, but Dak brings a little bit more to the table than Matt Ryan and showing he's just as good of a passer. So he's definitely in the top 10.
He's improved.
Yes, and he's absolutely I think he's a top 8 quarterback. He's in the top quartile of quarterbacks in the NFL.
I have no problem with that. No, that's what it looks like to this point, and their losing is not his issue.
They're given.
He's not at fault
They
at
are
all.
allowing a passing touchdown once for every 12 attempts against them.
Yeah,
and this is, honest to God, this is a
it's
problem
bad.
that plagued the great Tony Romo teams. And I know Gibbe doesn't want to hear that, but Tony Romo played a couple of years where the Cowboys' pass defense was setting records for being the worst in the NFL.
Yeah.
It's a thing that has plagued Matt Stafford at the points when he was healthy and had the talent around him. Just a complete ineptitude of the defense.
Yeah. You can only do so much. You can only do so much, and Prescott's up to a really nice start. Go ahead.
You're scoring points the way that they're scoring. You're not supposed to lose in the NFL.
No. If you're throwing for 400 yards a game,
yes,
and efficiently throwing for 400 yards a game, it's not like it's inefficient. Efficiently throwing for 400 yards a game, you can't lose at the rate with which they're losing.
Correct.
Week 3 is in the books. We will go over some of the big headlines for you coming up next at the bottom of the hour. Better or worser or just right sweet spot or something like that. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. 21 years ago, Alex started out of a small garage in Lakewood. To celebrate those humble beginnings in a garage, Alex is having a mattress garage sale. It's the same high-quality mattress they've always had, just at even lower prices. Anything mattress-related, they're going to have you covered. Pillow top, memory foam, gel foam, all the sizes. Also 0% financing available. During the garage sale, get a Sierra Sleep Queen for $399, a Kenilworth Queen pillow top for just $499, and an Oakmont Queen double-sided pillow top for just $799. They're in stock. They're ready to deliver. Plus, get more great deals on mattresses and everything at Northeast Factory Direct. Check them out. West 140th Street in Cleveland, Lakeland Boulevard in Euclid, Freeway Drive in Macedonia. The Clearance Center in Maple Heights are online at northeastfactorydirect.com. All right, let's do a little NFL landscape 3 games in. Let's just take what you saw in Week 3, though. Your biggest surprise from Week 3, Z, was what?
The biggest surprise in Week 3.
To be honest, I don't really have any. I got most of them right, to be honest.
You did.
We're just being honest.
Listen, it was a good week for both of us. Yours was a great week, though.
Yeah.
Mine was just a solid week. Big surprise to me was the Cardinals losing at home to the Leons. Losing. And you may have gotten that right with the scores, but I don't believe you had them losing that game.
The thing I got most wrong this week was Jacksonville getting drilled at home by Miami.
Yeah,
I got that
drilled.
most wrong. Like, I put my faith in Minshew, and it went straight to hell. So that's what I got most wrong. The rest of them, I was a little surprised at how easily New England dispatched Las Vegas as well.
Yes.
I thought Vegas would have a little more fight to them, but they did not.
What about
that one was a little bit surprising to me.
What about the Titans having as tough of a time with the Vikings? The Vikings hadn't produced any offense the week before at all against the Colts, and the Titans are a team that is known for their defense, and yet the Vikings hung 30 on them. Cook was going, Justin Jefferson was going. That surprised me a little bit in that game as well.
I agree. I think one of the things where I'm getting close to the point of acknowledging that I just had this wrong is with Josh Allen. They got up to a huge start, huge lead against the Rams. The Rams battled back and took a lead late. He leads them on a 2-minute drive for a score, aided by an egregious pass interference penalty. Nevertheless, they do score, they do win, and I'm almost to the point where I hate doing this too, but I almost to the point where I have to maybe admit I'm wrong on him. I just didn't think that you could be that inaccurate and win, but he throws so many haymakers. He's almost like a guy who throws nothing but haymakers. And you can jab him, and sometimes those haymakers miss. But when they hit, and now that they have Diggs, you're just more scared of what they are outside. He looks great. He does. Now, he still makes 4 throws in a game that don't make any stinking sense, but he's been great.
But he's only thrown 1 interception. I think you go back his last 14 games, it's something like 33 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. So his misses are not
turning it over.
Costly. But he's playing, just simply sensational football. I'll admit that I'm wrong, and I think that that's a tremendous testament to not only his hard work, but to Brian Daboll and that staff, and for him, the continuity. And that's one of the things people get so down on Baker. He's had to go in a different offensive system every year that he's been in the NFL. That's not easy. Josh Allen is progressing because he's had a thought partner working with him in Brian Daboll, just like what you've seen from Lamar Jackson and Greg Roman with the Ravens. Having that continuity, having an entire system that is tailored to your strengths, personnel be brought in to your strengths and that system because of the continuity that you have, that helps bring about success. Baker's had totally different personnel brought in. He's had totally different systems. He's gone from a total 11 personnel, we're going to drop back and throw it all over the place type of a system, to now what seems to suit him better. Let's move you out of the pocket, take advantage of your mobility, your throw on the run accuracy, the 2 tight end sets, etc. So you're seeing, the guys that have had that continuity and capitalized on it, you tip your cap to. Their continuity is not the only answer. Carson Wentz has regressed every single year that I feel like he's been in the NFL, especially since his injury.
He has.
Even though he's had the same kind of support system around him. It's been Doug Peterson the whole time. I realize Frank Reich and John DeFilippo, who were there, have moved on. But same head coach, same offense. Doug Peterson was the play caller. You're seeing that just those guys working together. And Allen's big. And I will say, I do think that we are in an era where mobility is as important as ever. And the guys who have that little
Yep.
bit, Mahomes, you never call him Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. You would call Josh Allen Lamar Jackson, but they're going to make and extend 2 to 5 drives a game with them picking up a first down running. And then with Allen,
We saw that from Joe Burrow 2
of
weeks
course,
ago.
and with Allen, you have that as, not only near the goal line, he's a great goal line hammer a la Cam Newton in the power quarterback run game. So Josh Allen, though, you just have to tip your cap to what he's done. But I also think Baker, if Kevin Stefanski were here when Baker was drafted, or even if I think that if you ran what you were running Baker's rookie year, all of these years, the continuity of it would have lent itself to success for him. And I think that
The Todd Haley offense
Yes.
from year one.
that continuity would have helped him. You just have never gotten that for Baker. And I think that's why it's all about the arrow this season. As he gets more comfortable, and he's playing super efficient. I mean, what's his back-to-back games, 16 to 23 passing? You'll take that all day long. No interceptions this week. You'll take that all day long. There are going to be games, and I would imagine this Sunday is one of them, where 23 pass attempts are not likely to produce the winning formula. They're just they just score too much. Now, are you going to try to run and keep them off the field? Is your best defense in this case going to be a ball control offense? I think partially. And as a little spoiler in my keys to the game, one's going to be throw it all over the yard, and it's also one other one is going to be run it and keep them off the field. How can they both be true? Not sure. Not my job to figure that out. But we need to do both of those things, I think, to beat the Cowboys.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And in terms of Buffalo, they have had – now, L.A.'s a full day, but L.A.'s had to come across the country in back-to-back weeks. They played Philly last week, and then they go back to Buffalo this week. So that you give them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt there. But their other 2 wins are against the Jets and the Dolphins. They play Vegas this week. They're at Vegas, at Tennessee. They play Kansas City on a Thursday night, October 15th. Wow. Then it's the Jets. Then it's New England. Then get this. So the 3 games that follow the Jets bye week are New England, Seattle, Arizona. So in their next 7 games, they play Tennessee, Kansas City, New England, Seattle, Arizona. How good are you? You're going to find out.
We're going to find out. And I think for us and our aspirations, this next 3-game stretch, but especially this next 5-game stretch, is going to answer a lot of those questions. You get Las Vegas, you get Indianapolis, who are 2 teams that you are directly competing with for a wild card spot in this. Or obviously, look, we could go win our divisions, go beat the Steelers. Why not? I'm not saying that that's off the table, but those are teams.
Hey, buddy, extended another week, too. Extended another week.
Right, because then the
Houston.
Texans come here. So those through week 9, you get the Colts, the Raiders, and the Texans at home.
Yep.
You need to go 2-1 in those games. 3-0 would be great. You need to go 2-1 in those games. And then on the road, you've got Dallas, Steelers, Bengals. Got to go 1-2, but you'd love to go 2-1.
Of course. Yeah. 2 and 2-1 in that is the requirement, and you're going up against. There's 6 teams that you say to yourself in the AFC, yeah, they're probably going to be in. So we're that team that is battling, and of course, go win the division if you can. Surpass the Ravens, all of that. But I feel pretty confident that Baltimore and Pittsburgh are going to make the postseason, and I feel confident we're going to. But you identified the teams that you're dealing with, and we play them all. Because some of the teams that you thought you were going to be dealing with, you're not. You're not having to deal with Denver. I thought Denver might be a team that could be sneaky. Maybe the Chargers. Not looking that way.
No, not looking that way at all. And the schedule has fallen for you to get all of those teams at home. And I think that's critical.
Yes.
So far, we've been obviously great at home, 2-0 at home, off to an excellent start here in front of the fans at First Energy Stadium, and you want to keep that going. But if you want to be better and improve your playoff odds, which would be, in Gibbe's world, lower your playoff odds, which would be actually a better that's why better or worse. If you want to better your playoff odds, you need to win those games. And speaking of better or worse, the hour is near.
You can't do it better than that.
The hour is near.
You can't do it better than that. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Both down.
Brilliant Electric Sign Company is Northeast Ohio's largest full-service sign company, serving their clients for over 91 years. Contact the experts at Brilliant Electric Sign to provide you a state-of-the-art signage solution that will grow your business. Visit them at brilliantsign.com. And with that, we head on to the Fifth Third Money Line. Our good buddy Andrew Gribble joins us as well as we play a little game we like to call Higher, Lower, or Just Right, or Better or Worser, or Sweet Spot. It's brought to you by Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine, the nation's largest medical school, preparing future generations of physicians, pharmacists, dentists with the Browns. And now Gribbs is with us on the money line, and Gibbe is here, and it's pure joy.
Yes.
Go ahead, Gibbe.
Hi, Gribbs. How you doing?
Doing great. How you guys doing?
Gribbs.
Pure joy, Gribbs.
Higher or lower as I die.
Give
trying
it. You
to
waited
talk.
all day for
I
your
literally
first
took a breath
moment.
and was
For first
nothing.
moment.
You know what's cool, though? What I've noticed when I go to some of those studios that have the lights, they have on, off, and they have a cough button all in one spot, so
cough button.
that one didn't have to go out over the air.
No,
Yep,
it
that's
did.
something. Those are next level, those studios.
Good news.
Boy.
No one's listening.
That must be a
anyways.
studio from the future. That's not true, Gibbe. We have an ardent audience that is very, very supportive of everything happening here, and they are demanding. This is your first chance to speak publicly, though, about the outpouring over the weekend of people demanding lights in the studio.
I ignored it all.
No, you didn't. You engaged.
People
Wrong.
worry about what you can control.
Wrong. New phone.
Again,
who
I
dis?
have nothing to even do with this.
Do your job.
So, yeah.
Do your job.
we're doing the best we can. What time's our show on today?
Now.
Yeah, some people don't know that still. Anyways, moving on. Higher, lower, or just right. This comes from ESPN's NFL Nation. This year they're doing a group of more than 80 writers, editors, and TV personalities.
Wow.
So it's a cornucopia of information to determine the weekly
Abundance.
power
A real
rankings.
bonanza.
First and foremost, the Browns are ranked 18th, up from number 23 in the ESPN poll a week ago. Higher, lower, or just right? Gribble, you are the honorary guest. We start with you.
I mean, I think it's a little disrespectful considering the Browns are the lowest ranked one team on the list. But, you know, again, it's early in the season. This is prove it time. So I'll go with just right for the moment and with plenty of room to grow.
Zegura?
Again, disrespect us all you want. Last week you said we're 23. Ha! 14-point win. This week, 18. We're still not in the top half of the league. We're 2-1. Come on. There are teams ahead of us that I definitely think we can beat. Look, you want to make a statement? Look who number 17 is. It's the Dallas Cowboys. You want to go, as The Rock said, as he was set to face off with Triple H in an Intercontinental title ladder match at Madison Square Garden long time ago. He said, I'm going to climb rung by damn rung. And that's what the Browns are going to do. We're going to go from 23 to 18, up to 13 after we win this week. Let's go.
God.
Well, Bo, I just asked higher, lower, or just right, and I got a wrestling answer. So what say you?
You did.
That was a good one, though.
I
Rung
think
by damn rung.
I think it's kind of the sweet spot. I think it's fine right where it's at. I think it depends on who you've played. I think we've got to beat a good team. We got a chance to do it Sunday. We do, then we'll move up to the spot where I think you're capable of. I agree. See, there's a lot of teams ahead of us that we can beat. We just haven't done that yet. The two teams we've beat are two of the worser teams in the league.
That's right.
All right, away we go. Next.
Higher or lower?
Number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs, and rightfully so. Number 2, even though a rough showing last night, the Baltimore Ravens hold fast at number 2. Should they just be lower? We know they're not going to be higher, but should they be lower? Zegura, the floor is yours.
I believe they should have a higher number, which means they would be lower, I think, on the list. Thus, they should be worse. And I realize you don't want to overreact. That's what we do in the NFL. Let's overreact a little bit.
It's week to week.
The formula is there to beat them. You get the lead. You force them to pass. And I think there are a few teams, Seattle, Green Bay, the way that they are playing behind them. We know the Titans beat them in the playoffs a year ago. They're also undefeated. The Bills are playing great football. So I'm going to say, worse.
Bishop.
It's week to week, so they have to be worser. I think there's a team at number 3 that would have a similar recipe, not exactly as Kansas City in terms of being able to throw the ball down the field. So I would say slightly worser than where they are.
Gribble.
Yeah, you know, I was a firm believer before yesterday's game that they were the best team in the league, and I'm officially alarmed.
I'm putting them lower. I'm putting them a little bit lower because, like Nathan said, the formula is there. And I'll also point to the fact I just don't think they're running the ball the same as they did last year. I think they're still really good at running the ball. They have the best rushing quarterback in the league. It's just not the same as it was last year, which was historic. And I just think it's a little bit worse. And I'm a little bit worried by their they just lose all composure when they're trailing, and they just divert from their game plan. And it's alarming, I would say.
It's interesting to me that the guy who looks like their best ball carrier is definitely Gus Edwards. Dobbins had the one long run last week in the blowout that I think was, 56 yards? His other 10 carries have gone for 20 yards. Ingram has been solid, but he's averaging 4 yards a pop. Edwards is averaging 7 yards a carry. He looks like their best running back, which I don't think people had, but they split it up all the time, and I wonder if those guys, need to get a little bit more of a rhythm.
I don't know. Something didn't go right last night. A little panic in Baltimore. Just what the world needs. Next.
Higher or lower?
Seahawks, number 3. The Packers, number 4. We go to number 5 in the ESPN.com power poll. The Buffalo Bills, 3-0. They are number 5. Should they be higher, lower, or are they just right? Beau Bishop?
That's a sweet spot for them. That's right where they need to be, is right in there. It was impressive the way that they built the big lead. They've got to figure out how to play with leads a little better, take the air out of the ball. They were still slinging it around. They just didn't need to, and it allowed the Rams to come all the way back. I really like the Rams. I thought that was a really gutty effort out of them, but they were able to seal the deal and get the win. Allen has been sensational. The addition of Diggs has really helped loosen things up for them. There's a lot to like about what Buffalo. They're elite defensively. I realize their wins are against their other 2 wins are against the Dolphins and the Jets, but I like a lot of what's going on in Buffalo right now.
Gribble.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Beau here. I came into this with this elaborate. I rarely pick the sweet spot, but this is right where they belong, and I think it's more a testament to the 4 teams ahead of them. I think there's a clear tier difference between those top 4 and then Buffalo, but I think Buffalo is the head of the next tier. I just think they've been impressive on both sides of the ball, and Josh Allen is really good, and we're just going to have to deal with that, I think.
Zegura.
Sweet spot times 3. That's right. They're in the sweet spot.
Professional fence sitter.
However, I do think the Steelers belong in the top tier of the league. And my question to all 3 of you is, neutral field right now, Bills, Steelers, AFC Championship, who would you be favoring? It's a pick 'em.
Gribble?
I mean,
Bills.
I would probably go with Pittsburgh just on Roethlisberger and all of that, but Buffalo kind of looks like the beginning of Roethlisberger's ascent to me. Really young, fast defense, big physical quarterback that's hard to take down, that stands in and throws it. A lot of young Roethlisberger and the way that they went about it with Pittsburgh, which ought to be a little scary for the rest of the AFC.
My only concern with them and why I give the Steelers the advantage right now is Connor's looked great, that they can run the ball. I'm still not sure that the Bills can run the ball. And you do have to run the ball to close games out.
It is.
Yeah, and they to your point, they couldn't do that this weekend. They couldn't do it.
Yeah. Let's go next.
Higher or lower?
Titans are 6th at 3-0. Up next, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the team we were just talking about. Zegura, great, and Bishop, great points. Connor, running game, kind of important. And I think for everybody that was questioning Big Ben and how much Big Ben would have, maybe that running game had a little bit more of a question. But 3-0 through 3 weeks and ranked number 7th. Zegura, should they be higher, lower, or are they just right?
They are better than number 7. They are a top 5 team in the NFL. I think they are a legitimate threat to. They're the one team that I think is a legit threat to Kansas City right now because they are not the kryptonite. We'll get a chance maybe to see that, in the playoffs this year. But I think the Steelers are better than that. And Ben's just rounding back into form. They're not playing at their peak on offense yet. And we talked about James Conner. Deontay Johnson's been having a great season, got knocked out with the concussion last week. Chase Claypool has shown the ability to make big plays. But what have they been missing? Back in the day when they had Heath Miller, they had that tight end over the middle. And Ebron, when Johnson went down, Ebron stepped up this week. And Eric Ebron is a big addition to that offense. We know how great their defense is, But Ebron's a big addition to that offense. I think the Steelers are a complete and very scary football team that will only get better as the season goes on, and their ranking will get better as well.
Bishop.
Same. They at least got to be ahead of Tennessee. They're better than Tennessee. I'm fine with them right there with Buffalo, but they're better than Tennessee.
Gribble.
I disagree with you guys. I'm going the other way. I need to see them beat a team that's won a game, and I think that they've had an easier start to the season, and they're not exactly blowing these teams away. I agree with all your points. I think they are going to get better. I just currently like the Rams and Patriots better right now than the Steelers. I just need to see more of it. I just don't. I can't get excited about 3-0 team that beat the Giants, Broncos, and the winless Texans.
That is a very
Think about this, guys.
point.
They will be favored in every game. They play at the Titans this week. If that game goes off, then it's Eagles at home, then us at home, and before they get to the Ravens, they'll be favored in every game until the Ravens game, and that'll be a monster.
Next.
Higher or lower?
The Rams are number 8. The Patriots number 9. At number 10, the New Orleans Saints. A losing record at 1-2. Should they be higher, lower, or are they just right? Andrew Gribble will go with you first.
Yeah, I'm putting them lower, and it's simply because of the 49ers. I mean, the Saints have some injuries with Michael Thomas and everyone, and the 49ers have a ton of injuries, and the 49ers got their job done clearly against the Giants, but they dominated in that game when they could have easily just played a close game. And I just think the Saints are, like I said with the Ravens earlier, to a different degree, the Saints are missing something, and I can't put my finger on it, but they're just not the same.
I can.
I get Michael Thomas.
I can put my finger on it.
Yeah.
Michael Thomas and Drew Brees' arm. That's what.
That
That's
Bill
what
Carton's
they're
got
missing.
two
Defense
sides,
isn't good either, though.
which is a surprise.
Man.
I'll tell you who is good, though. Alvin Kamara is back.
He's great.
And it's really amazing when you hear guys say, yeah, I toughed it out. I played through an injury last year. The difference in Alvin Kamara last year to this year, it's night and day. He's back. He's back to the 2017, 2018 Alvin Kamara, and he is a force. I do think Emmanuel Sanders, we started to see that connection start to percolate a little bit. This is going to be good for their long-term growth when they get Thomas back. I still think right now, if they, they're probably about right. I think as the Bucs continue to get healthy, but it seems like they can't. Godwin's out, another 2 weeks now with this hamstring? They really haven't had their full complement of guys together. And has there ever been a more interesting stat line in the history of the National Football League than Mike Evans, 2 catches, 2 yards, 2 touchdowns? That's like a Jerome Bettis line from back in the day.
It was.
2 carries.
It was.
2 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Bishop,
I would have them worse. I would have them worse than where they are. I mean, the Raiders beat them a week ago Monday, and the Raiders are 15th. So by definition, I would have them below them. I'd have them below Arizona right now, and probably Tampa as well. And
Yes.
I mean, 49ers, what Shanahan pulled off. We all knew they'd beat the Giants, but to just eviscerate them with everybody he's without was pretty remarkable.
Next.
Higher or lower?
The 49ers are 11th. The Buccaneers 12th. The Arizona Cardinals, after suffering their first loss, are 13th. We go to number 14, the Chicago Bears, and a new quarterback in Bears land as Nick Foles takes over the reins. 3-0, though. Should they be higher, lower, or are they just right? Beau, we will start with you.
Oh, the team of my youth, the Chicago Bears. Look, I can't put them too much further down than where they are. Well, it's hard. Like, if they played Dallas, I think Dallas would probably beat them right now. I do think Foles, so I guess in that sense they would have to be a little lower. But they're a product of who they've played. It's an impressive comeback. Foles had the pick, but the pick's on a jump ball on a touchdown pass where Robinson could have wrestled the ball away. So it's not like he made an egregious mistake like Trubisky makes about 6 of every game. I think you could go – they're probably sweet spot is really where you want to go with them. I realize I'm fence sitting here today, but it feels like that's about where they should be, right in there around 15.
Gribble, what do you got?
I'm going lower. I just can't award a team that's making a quarterback change at week 3 with a spot as high as 14 on the list. I like the Raiders, Colts, and Cowboys better than the Bears right now. I can't get excited about the Bears right now.
Zegura.
I feel like we beat the Bears right now. I'm not afraid of the Bears. So
You shouldn't be.
definitely way lower. I agree with Gribbs.
But they also haven't lost.
They haven't lost, but
It's weird. I mean,
it
it's
is
weird.
weird.
They beat the Lions on a weird play where Swift
They should have
drops the
lost
ball.
to the Lions.
Then the Giants are dreadful.
They barely beat
And
the
then
Giants.
their most impressive performance was when Foles came in against the Falcons, which is what I think gets them where they are.
I'm
is
pretty
the
sure
hope
they're
of what
going to
that'll
be.
look like going forward.
I'm pretty sure after Week 5 they're going to be 3-2. If they prove me wrong, they do. I'm pretty sure they're going to be 3-2 after Week 5. Colts, Bucks next 2 weeks.
I think they can beat the Colts. I don't think the Colts are gangbusters.
Their D is good. I think their D is very
Their
good.
D's good.
And Jonathan
Well, they
Taylor.
feasted on bad teams too, though.
They have, but they
I
made
mean, they lit up. The Jets are just terrible.
they made the Minnesota Vikings look significantly worse than the Tennessee Titans just did.
They did, but I don't know if the Vikings are any good. And they lost to Jacksonville. So they played Jacksonville, the Vikings, and the Jets. So they're in a lot of the similar. Who was the other team we just did who hasn't played anybody? They haven't played anybody yet either. They go Bears, us, Bengals. I mean, their schedule's really advantageous. Ravens. It doesn't really. You understand how they could make a run at that division.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap up higher
That's
or
it?
lower.
So much more to
that's
come.
it. Sad. We had
Wow,
so
sad.
much
Pure
more
joy.
to come.
We're up against it.
Gribbs, thanks, buddy. Appreciate you as always.
No-
We'll talk to you next week for more of
No
this.
problem. See you guys.
All right, that's our great friend Andrew Gribble joining us
Yes,
here.
boys.
Reminder: all guests who appear on CBD appear on the Fifth Third Money Line, Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns Daily a Fifth Third betterer. One final segment. Lots to get to.
So much.
Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Zenith is committed to athletes as they are to the game. Zenith helmets designed with an uncompromising attention to fit, feel, style, and safety. Learn more at zenith.com. That is zenith.com. Go Tribe tonight. Fun one.
Yes.
Cole versus Bieber. That's a lot of juice to
Biebs.
it right there. Yanks in town.
A ton of juice.
Anything else going in town today?
Yeah, there's maybe a little something going on in town today as well with the presidential debate from Cleveland.
Oh, that's tonight
Yep,
too.
That's happening.
Holy smoke.
30.
That's happening right now. And real quickly, just a little bit of news. The Browns activating
Okay.
safety Javonte Moffitt, signing him to the active roster off of the practice squad. In addition, the club placed JoJo Natson on injured reserve and waived Montrell Meander. So there still is an open spot on the roster, I believe. Moffitt was, of course, the one who had a couple interceptions in training camp. Looked good. A free safety, undrafted free agent out of Middle Tennessee State. He's a rookie. Added to the roster, some more safety help for the Browns.
Good job. Good note out of you getting that in here right at the end. The next level is coming up next. We're back tomorrow. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Down.